Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast.
Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Bill Gillespie. Coach Gillespie has more than 40 years of experience in the collegiate strength and conditioning and 2 years of experience at the professional level after serving as an assistant strength conditioning coach for the NFL Seattle Seahawks from 2003 until just prior to his return to Liberty University. Gillespie got his coaching start at the collegiate level at Liberty. He served as an assistant strength conditioning coach from 1983 to 1991, while also serving the university as assistant track and field coach in 1983 to 1985 and 1987 to 1991, while being head track and field coach in 1986. After leaving Liberty in 1991, Gillespie spent 11 years as a member of the strength conditioning staff at Washington University. Gillespie joined the staff as assistant strength conditioning coach in 1991 and was promoted to director of strength conditioning in 1999. Gillespie helped the football program make 9 bowl appearances during his tenure, including 3 trips to the Rose Bowl. Gillespie was an assistant at Washington when the department earned Pac-12 Strength Conditioning Staff of the Year in 1991, while finishing as a finalist for National Strength Conditioning Coach of the Year in 2001. Gillespie returned to Liberty University in January of 2005 and remained there 14 years before moving on to the Sorinex team. Gillespie is a world-renowned powerlifter, and at 60 years of age set a world record of 914 pounds, and then pressed 1130 at 62, eclipsing his old bench press record. Coach Gillespie loves the Lord Jesus Christ, and his favorite Bible verse is Psalms 46:10, "Be still and know that I am God." Gillespie, a member of the Collegiate Strength Conditioning Coaches Association and a Master Strength Conditioning Coach, received his bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary studies from the University of Liberty in 1983. So welcome to the show, Coach.
Thank you very much, bro. Excellent job.
I was worried I was going to stumble through that, and I know I've stumbled through a lot easier ones, so I'm glad I made it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I sure appreciate it, and this is truly an honor. I appreciate every opportunity I have that maybe somebody will listen to what I have got to say. That's all.
I think a lot of people want to know, and like we were talking before the show, more people are asking you, and so you're becoming a speaker. And I don't even know if that's what you meant to be, but it's turned into something. So how has that kind of worked out for you?
You know, when I coached, before every workout, we'd have 2 a day most of the time. And I'd go out there. I have no idea what I was going to say to the team. And I get done. I give this 5-minute little prep talk, And I go, man, that was really good. They said, you going to say that to the next group? I said, well, I can't remember what I said to the first group. It was God inspired it, and I truly had to have my heart. I found that speaking is more about a revelation of your heart and spirit, in life. Okay. If it's in you, it's easy for it to come out, it just pours out of you. It's not like you got to muster it up, fight for it, pretend like it's there. It's just, that's what comes out. You squeeze a tube of toothpaste, and guess what comes out? Toothpaste. So when I want to go and speak, a great story. I had to speak to the football team at Liberty one time on a Sunday afternoon. Big team meeting. And I was supposed to give this big presentation. And I'm in church that morning, and I'm praying, God, help me to say the right words and speak. And God says, you won't even sing in church. Now, I didn't sing in church for a reason, okay? Because I sing really bad. So bad that an old lady turned around one time in church and asked me not to sing. And then 2 years later, another lady did it. Well, when the second one did it, I said, that's it, man, I can't sing. I sing horrible. So I quit singing. And then that day, God just put on my heart, said, man, if I'm asking him to give me the words to speak, then I better do what I need to do. And I sang, and my wife turned and looked at me like, what in the world? He's singing in church. And I went to give a speech that afternoon, and it was dynamic. It was unbelievable. And obviously it didn't come from me. It came from God, but it was from my obedience. I believe that I followed him and did what he told me to do, allowed me the opportunity to speak from my heart, and if I'm not speaking from my heart, then I got to correct my heart before I can speak.
That's an interesting topic right there. Obedience doesn't always look like we have it in our head. Sometimes what we're being asked to do doesn't even sound, like something we would do. And by following that path, we end up where we are, whether it be a
Yeah.
podcast, a guest on a podcast, running a podcast. I never saw any of this. I just kind of
Yeah.
went with the idea I thought I was being asked to do. And now I get to sit and talk with guys like you that are just unbelievable at the craft.
Thank you. I just, for years, people ask me, why are you bench press? I mean, because people now, now you look at it and you go, well, he was the world record holder. He set the world record. Of course, that's why he bench presses. But you know what? I wasn't that good for years. I lifted for 10 years hard and came out of college. And I mean, I was an All-American shot putter. So I was into lifting weights. And I went to the national championships, the first drug-free nationals in 1983. And I bench pressed 341 pounds. And I was 35 pounds less than the worst guy in my whole weight class. In fact, in the whole session, I was the worst guy in the whole meet. And, at the age of 35, I'm stuck at around 440 on the bench press. All right, I'm done. I just suck at the bench, and I was good at deadlifting, and I got really good at squatting, but I just I sucked at the bench, and God kept telling me, no, I want you bench pressing. I'm like, God, I suck at the bench. Why not let me become a baseball player? Why, I loved baseball when I was a kid, and football and wrestling, and I got into track and field, and then I got into archery, and I was competing in archery, and I'm like, God, I'm pretty good at that archery stuff. Why don't you let me do that? And he goes, no, I want you bench pressing. I'm like, man, God, I suck at the bench, but okay. And I kept staying with it. And I mean, I started when I was 14. Here I am 60 years old going, yeah, I'm pretty good. I was good. I people knew who I was, but I wasn't like the guy. And at 60, I realized, oh my gosh, I got a chance to become the guy. Those guys that I admired so much, they're way, way, way more talented than I am. They're way better than I am. People say, what was it like to be the strongest man in the world? I just lifted more than everybody else did. I wasn't the strongest man in the world, not by any means whatsoever. And that's one of the philosophies I've always had, is I don't have to be the strongest man in the world. I just have to lift more than everybody else, and everybody thinks I'm the strongest man. And so what I did is I used the background of my lifting and coaching to allow myself to maybe redesign how we did it. Back when I was 35, I just said, you know what? I had sat down with the former Soviet Union weightlifting coach. He taught us how to design programs, told us it would take him 40 hours to write up a 4-week routine. I said, there ain't no way it takes you that long. And then when he finished the seminar, I said, it's impossible to write up a 4-week routine in just 40 hours. And it's so complex. But it was too complex for everybody else to put it together. And I sat there and I thought, you know what? These are facts. They had hundreds of thousands of subjects that they used, and they found these are facts that made people stronger. So I took those facts and I redesigned how we trained the bench press. And that's when my bench press started taking off. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey this whole time. I mean, I never got injured. And that's one of the reasons why I was able to continue to make gains up until I'm, set the world record in 62. But it was a progression, just a little bit of steps. And there were some bad years. I mean, people said, you ever had any bad workouts? I said, shoot, I had a bad decade between the ages of 49 and 59. I was working 60, 70 hours a week. And, pouring my heart out. And the players, and you just don't have the energy to recover. You just can't. And I've been battling a sleep disorder for almost a decade now. And when I set that world record, 3 hours sleep was common. I just couldn't sleep. 5 hours sleep was like, yeah, I got a chance. There were nights I slept 45 minutes and just could not go to sleep. And I've been seeing all kinds of doctors and everything, but and I'm doing better, a lot better now. But you can make every excuse in the world, okay? I can make every excuse in the world, but what I didn't allow myself to make excuses. I just said, this is what has to be done. It doesn't matter whether a rabbit can climb a tree or not. that rabbit had to climb the tree. The same thing with me. I had to make it happen. I had to, some way, somehow. And I knew that within me wasn't the ability to make it happen. So I said, God, in your time, I'm going to do what you're telling me to do. And in fact, what's really interesting was that the day I broke the world record, I told my wife going into the meet, this is going to be my last meet. I'm 62. Ain't a whole lot of tread left on the tire. I'm beat up. I'm hurting. I'm driving 6 hours, 3 hours each way to go to find spotters every week so I could get a heavy bench workout in. I mean, it's with the equipment, the way I was lifting and the equipment I was using, you had to find just the right spotters. And she doubted me, but you know what? I knew. I said, okay, this is it. And so I go to the meet. It was January 22nd, 2022. And I go in the meet and you get 3 attempts. And I said, I'm going for broke. Guys, I'm going for the world record again. Now I had tried that world record in a meet. You only get 3 attempts. And once you pick a weight, you can't go back down. All right. So I picked that attempt, 6 other meets. So 18 times I had tried that world record and missed it. And you're talking about every 2 months, 3 months of training, and then going and try it again and train again. And you're beat up, you're tired, you don't, it's hard to keep going. I just said, I'm gonna give, this is gonna be it. I'm gonna give it my best. I said, and so I go in there, my first meet, my first attempt, and I get a big old cramp in my right hamstring. Well, as soon as you get a cramp in your right hamstring, the bar shifts slightly to the left. Now, for guys benching 300, 400, even 500 pounds, big deal. You can shift it right back and still lift the weight. But 1,100 pounds, it don't shift back. It just stays where it wants to stay. And I just yelled, grab it. It's over. Ain't no way I'm going to get this weight. So the second attempt, I brought the weight out, and it's, every attempt, it just felt so heavy. And so I take the weight out and I bring it down. And unfortunately, I did not keep my chest up. My chest caved in, which is absolutely no in the bench press. And I got the weight down. I thought I was about 4 inches from touching it. And I just yelled, grab it. I ain't going to get this thing. I'm out of position. Just grab it. And someone told me afterwards, they said, Coach, you were only about 3/4 of an inch from touching your chest. I went, what? Was I really? I said, wow. So here I am. It's my last meet, last attempt ever. And as a man of God, people think, would you ask for a gift from like Samson? No. No. Did I pray and ask God to help me get this lift? No. What I did is I was humbled. And I just bowed my head and I said, God, thank you. That's all I can tell you is thank you. Thank you. I love you, God. Thank you for letting me do something I love to do at the highest levels for so many years. And I don't feel right in asking you to help me. But what I do need to know, God, is I need you to let me know that what I've done, whether I'm successful at this lift or not, I hope you know that I've given you everything I've gotten. For 50 years, I've tried as hard as I could. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And I told God, I'm okay with it if you're okay with it. And but I said, God, have you got any tips? Now's the time. And almost instantly, I felt like God was saying, move your hands out 1/8 of an inch. Now, no, that doesn't sound significant to most people, but for me, it's huge. So I said, okay, all right. And then he said, try to bring the bar down a little faster. Well, 1,100 pounds comes down the way it wants to come down. Okay. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to be able to. I try to slow it down, but I tried to bring it down a little faster, but I don't even know if I did. But when they handed me the weight, I thought, okay, here we go. You say this as a young kid. That day's going to come. My back's going to be against the wall. Game's going to be in my hands. And I'm going to have to rise to the occasion and win this thing. I'm going to I will it to happen. And I'm going to tell you something, folks. It don't happen. It don't work that way. Okay? When they handed me that weight, I went, oh my gosh, it still feels like a truck sitting on my chest. I mean, I couldn't believe it. It felt so heavy. But your discipline in the preparation to get there is the motivation that's going to get you to be successful. That's why when you go and prepare, preparation, you'll hear coaches say it all the time. Preparation is the key. That's what the focus is on, preparation. Learn how to prepare, and winning is a byproduct. It just happens, you know. And I know people talk bad, say we shouldn't talk about winning, but God does say, run to win the race. Now, you may not get first place, but you're going to win. You're going to be a winner if you follow biblical principles in your training and in your life and in your business, because it's going to teach you how to do things the right way. You're not going to waste energy. And like when I get my back against the wall and I can't make a gain, and I'm hitting that wall over and over and over again. And if I go left and right, I'd be compromising, I'd be cheating. I can't do that, I can't cheat. And I can't get up over the wall. So what do I do? There's no way. I can't get around that wall. And God says, bend your knees and get on your knees and ask for my help. Okay. And I did. And God would go, hey, how about this door? Well, I didn't even know there was a door there. And he would show me a technique of training that I'd go, well, nobody else has ever done that before. Thank you. And it allowed me to design programs for myself that were different, that were not the normal. And I was very, very thankful for it. And so when I took that weight for the third attempt and I brought the weight down, and that judge said, press, I see, because you got to pause on your chest. That thing, I swear to you, if anything ever happened, it was God reaching down there and grabbing that barbell. It flew up. It was cake. There were technically 2 benches in my life that were so perfectly sound that I remember it was cake. They were just like, I still don't know what I did, but I'll tell you what, that weight came flying up. And the same thing with that 1130. It came right up. It was in perfect position. And the judge, he rightfully so, held me a little longer on the chest and a little longer at the lockout, because there have been so many criticisms of people setting the world record and then not really doing it correctly, And he made me hold it. And I did, put it in the rack, and everybody went crazy. I mean, the crowd was crying. My spotters were crying. And they go, you just broke the world record. And you know what my reply was? Oh, no. It's about the 50-year journey. That's what's important. And to me at that moment, I was still in that mindset of it didn't matter whether I set the world record or not. It was what mattered to me was that journey. Okay. Not that did I do the journey the way God wanted me to do it? Or did I go and compromise? Did I follow his instructions? Did I follow his lead? Because then that 50-year journey transformed me. It made me into a different individual, to the point where they had a company come in and they did a test on my ability to focus. And I'm sitting in a room and they're asking me questions. Yes, no. And they said to me, sir, we've tested over 100,000 athletes, and you've tested higher on your ability to focus and concentrate, higher than any other athlete we've ever coached. And I said, really? I thought they were jerking me around. I said, no way. And they said, yeah. He says, aren't you that guy that bench presses a lot of weight? I'm like, yeah, obviously. Yeah. Okay. And he says, that's why. I says, explain to me what you're talking about. He says, you don't have to get psyched up to lift big weights. I said, oh, no. I don't waste any energy doing that. No way. He goes, that's right. He says, because you know where your mind's got to go. All right. And your ability to focus is so off the charts. He says, let me ask you something. He goes, how does caffeine affect you? And I said, oh my gosh, it's like 12 hours, 14 hours. I'm still buzzing. And he goes, no, he says, what happens is, he says, your ability to focus when you take caffeine sends you to a place that you can't come out of. He says, you can't come out of there. He says, you're going so deep in your thoughts and concentrations. He says, you just can't calm down. You're going to have to learn how to back off your caffeine. And I didn't take very much at all. I probably took less than 200 milligrams of caffeine. But, he was right. And because of that. And so when people go and tell me, oh, I'm not into lifting heavy weights and stuff like that, well, you know what? I think you should be, because not trying to set a world record, but to the point of holding yourself accountable. Okay. See, 300 pounds is 300 pounds today. It's 300 pounds tomorrow. I'm the inconsistent factor. The weight is consistent. It never changes. 300 pounds doesn't have a bad day. It doesn't have a good day. If I go in there and it beats me, I can't go and say, oh, it was the weight. It was me. And then at night, if I miss it, I got to look myself in the mirror and go, what do I have to change? What do I have to get better so that I can make that weight, beat that 300 pounds the next time? Now, when we go on our walk with Christ, who's the consistent factor and who's the inconsistent factor? I'm the inconsistent factor. All right. God is the consistent factor. So I got to go and lean on him to go and say, okay, hey, I just screwed up. It's not his fault. It's my fault. I'm the one that has to change. I'm the one that has to get better. And lifting that weight taught me how to be accountable. Now, no, I know the Bible says bodily exercise profiteth little. And I absolutely agree. Absolutely. If you stop with just the exercise for cosmetic looks, okay? But if you can go and learn more about your walk with Christ and about who you are as an individual, then it's going to make you a better person. And that journey, that 50-year journey that I was on, changed who I was. And now I'm a different human being. I don't see it, but I know it's there, and I know that I've accomplished that. And so that's why I say there's nothing wrong. Now, I was talking with my wife about this, and she was talking to me about today at lunch about different exercises that people love. And I said, they love it because they're not accountable. Spinner bikes. Okay. You can get a good work out really hard. No question about it. But there's no accountability. There's no measure of resistance, no measure, no measure of resistance. There's a measure of distance, but there's no accountability to it. And that's why a lot of superstar athletes, and like in the NFL, they didn't like to lift weights because they don't like to be held accountable, because the weight makes you accountable. And the changes in your life are going to be beyond physical. Okay. You're going to learn just the discipline. Hey, folks, 50 years, did I feel like lifting weights every day? Oh, no, never. No. I know people think, oh, you're just one of those weight room guys. No, I'm a normal guy who loves to compete. And fortunately for me, weights made for a great avenue for me to be able to compete, and not just in the competition area, but within myself with the weight. And so whenever I got 600 pounds, well, now I got to go to 700 pounds. Now I got 700 pounds. Now I got to go to 800 pounds. And, just little steps here and there, getting on that journey to excellence. And that's what God has called for us to do. I'm sorry, I've been going on and on and on, and I hope this is all good for you. But I've been on a journey lately, not to see how strong I am, because I don't bench press anymore. I'm on a journey to lose weight. Now, when I tell people, yeah, I've lost 100 pounds since I competed. Oh, my gosh. And I try to explain to them. I was like, the truth of the matter is a lot of people have lost 100 pounds. I got several friends who have lost 100 pounds. But when I set that world record, nobody in the world, in the history of this world, all the millions and billions of people had ever benched that weight, And I know that's a little incomprehensible for people to understand it. But now that I'm trying to lose weight, all I'm doing is taking the same principles that I used to develop my bench press, and now I'm trying to lose the weight because I don't need to be big anymore. So I want to get smaller. I can live longer. I can live better. I can have better quality of life when I get leaner. And so what I do is, and people go, well, you're doing it the smart way. Well, yeah, I've been a strength conditioning coach for years. I know what I'm doing. All right. But the fact of the matter is, it's uncomfortable. I'm not comfortable. I'm suffering. Okay. I'm hungry like all the time. I don't know of a time when I'm not hungry. I don't get to eat the things that everybody else gets to eat. We go out to dinner, we go out to somebody else's house. I may not eat because I can't compromise. I don't believe in cheat meals. I don't believe in cheating, cheat items. I got too much of a goal that I need to accomplish. And So I have just been working on that to lose weight, and I'll tell you what, I feel great now. But it's nothing wrong with us suffering. I mean, I think we're called in some way to not be comfortable. I think people go and say, "Oh, you've lived an amazing life and you've been able to accomplish so many amazing things," and I'm like, I'm no different than anybody else. I'm not gifted by any means whatsoever. I'm just so determined that when I get a goal in mind, I'm going to go till I make that goal. And hopefully I can grab a few people along the way and say, hey, come on, join me on this journey. Enjoy this trip with me. And let's see where we can go with this thing. This whole exercise thing cannot be superficial. It's got to be legitimate.
That, yes, you've dedicated your life to this, but also you've dedicated your life to two parallel paths. So not only have you made yourself the world record bench press holder, you've created tons of athletes that were able to go on and live out their dreams. So like you said, it's about the journey. So the clarity you have now, I know we never can go back, but the clarity we have now, what would you have changed in your career, if anything?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. The clarity. Yes. Sometimes the best, no. Every time I came up with a new idea in training, it was never in the weight room. It was when I stepped away from the weight room. I went hunting, sat in a tree stand for hours, or went on a long car ride for a trip with my family or something. And it gave me time to think through and think about what I needed to change and what I needed to do. And so I really believe that you have to go sometimes and step away. And now I've had the opportunity to step away from coaching and competing. And there were several things that I'm really, really glad I did. Lots of things that still people aren't reproducing. And we were able to get it done in a very efficient manner. I'll tell you one thing we did with all these up-tempo offenses and stuff, I started training the football team for shorter rest periods, and I controlled every rest period that was done in the weight workout. So like when I told the coaches, they'd ask me how long the workout would it be, and I'd tell them, oh, today's an hour and 47 minutes and 30 seconds. And they're like, no, seriously. And I was like, I'm serious. At precise that time, we will be done. And they were like, how do you know that? And I said, because I designed it that way. It was that precision. The team was strong. Oh my gosh, we were so strong. We had 1 year, we had, we were FCS, so we only had 85 scholarships or something like that. We had 83 players clean 300 or more on the football team. Okay, almost everybody cleaned 300 or more, and because my cleans were focused on as a representation of what we did in the weight workout. So my whole weight workout was to design the strength, power, speed that would contribute to the clean, because I knew that would be the lift I wanted it represented on the football field. So that's what we did, and that meant short burst intervals, just getting after it. And the kids are dying, man. They're dying. They were so hard, and I never allowed a period of time where there's an emphasis of conditioning. I conditioned year round. I didn't want to get a false illusion of strength, because when football season started, I believe a football player should be their strongest during football season because they're a football player. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but if I'm developing strength that's not applicable to the game of football, I'm wasting time and energy. I don't need to go and develop strength that doesn't going to apply to them for football season. So I wanted these kids to be as strong and powerful during football season as possible. So I had to set the whole thing up, and I really like that. The one thing that I have come to, and I found this out when I set the world record in the bench press, was I finally kept missing it. And I finally sat down and I said, all right, eliminate every ounce of energy in your workout that isn't going to contribute to you bench pressing that world record. I mean, we call it burn the ship, burn the gas. All right. We ain't going back home. All right. There's no more gas. We're here. All right. This is where it's going to happen. I'm just going to go give it everything I got. I've got to make sure I'm knowing where I'm going with this. But it was everything I had to get that world record. And so what I did was I eliminated all bodybuilding movements, anything that was bodybuilding. And that was what helped me get to the next level. And that's my big pet peeve now in talking with strength coaches is explaining to them, if I said I was going to train you and you heard about how hard I was as a strength coach, you might go, oh my gosh, he's going to kill me. But what if I said, I'm going to train your dog? What would you think I was going to do to your dog? Make him sit, stand till he pukes? No, I'm teaching your dog how to move in particular behavior movements, right? Right? I'm going to be efficient at moving. Same thing with my athletes. If I'm going to train you, I got to make sure I train you correctly. Now, if I train you incorrectly, instead of training that dog to sick him, I'm going to train it to sit. I don't want to sit. I want to sick him. And so that's why I think probably 85% of most routines that are out there are only hit. I mean, not 85. They're only, the best routines out there are only hitting about 85% proficiency because of we're screwing it up with the exercises that we're selecting. My tricep exercises in particular. I don't know if you know Louis Simmons, but Louis Simmons of Westside Barbell, when he was alive, he kept telling me, Bill, you want to build your bench, you got to do more triceps. Oh, okay. I'm not afraid of hard work. So I see him the next year, and I said, hey, Louis, I tried that. I've been doing more triceps, and I ain't getting any stronger. He goes, well, you're not doing enough. Oh, okay. So the next year, doubled it up and did even more. Third year, he says, you're not doing enough. I said, okay, you'll see. So the next year, it was sick. It was sick. I was doing triceps 8 times a week. 3 times a week, I was doing them twice a day, all trying to think that this was going to make my bench press go up. It didn't go up. And when I finally told him, I said, Louis, you can't be telling people to do more because some of us ain't afraid of hard work. And I said, I told him what I was doing. He goes, that's crazy. I said, yeah, you kept telling me to do more. So I just, I learned that from doing that, from doing so much, I found out which exercises actually worked and which ones didn't work. And so I eliminated the ones that didn't work. And lo and behold, it allowed my nervous system to work more efficiently than ever before. And that's what I would love to have the opportunity to train football players again. I'm 65. I doubt I'll ever get that chance, but you never know. It would probably be at the NFL level if I had a chance, because I really don't care about going back to the college level at all.
You never know what the plan is until the plan comes into effect, right? So
Yep.
never say never.
I know. Never say never. I mean, I don't know what, God might put on my heart to go, hey, this is what I need to do. My son's father-in-law passed away within a month ago. He was a great guy. I mean, as soon as we heard, we were like, my wife and I are like, let's plan the trip. Let's get up there. We're going to that memorial service. We're going to be there. We loved him, Harold King, and he was just an businessman, an accountant. He wasn't like a superhero. But you know what, that man, he was a great dad, a great husband, a great father. It wasn't fancy, but he was a superstar because he was a great husband, a great father, and a great grandfather to these kids, And I said to myself, cause I'm out there and I'm going for a walk. And I said, okay, God, what do you want from me? Huh? Now, what do you want from me? I'm ready. I'm ready. I've set the world record. I'm losing weight. I'm getting ready. What do you want? What do you want me to do? And he says, why don't you be like Harold? Why don't you just be like Harold? Ain't nothing wrong with that. And I thought, yeah, you know what? For right now, that's a pretty good thing to do. Love my wife, love my kids, love my grandchildren, and love my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. What a great life, And if the door opens up for anything else, great. But right now, I know that's what God wants me to do.
And that's a great plan. Sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes you'd mentioned it earlier. you can't see the forest because of the trees. You're
Yeah.
so far in it. It takes a
Oh.
6-hour drive, or like you said, or it takes something totally different to get away from that patch of woods so that you can see what's right in front of you.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And when I was throwing the shot put, it took me, I bet you 20 years. Oh, at least 20 years to figure out why one particular day I had the freakiest day in the world. I couldn't figure out why. And then years later I went, okay. The combination of my flexibility and my strength training crossed paths at a somewhat of a peak, and I looked like I knew what I was doing.
Now, when I was getting ready for this, I talked to some guys that worked for you. We happened to be friends, and they had a wonderful time working for you. And they said that one time in passing, maybe you had mentioned that speed pools and the carryover to athletics, explosiveness, RFD, and conditioning might be something that you would incorporate in the future.
Speed pulse. Oh gosh, yes. I started Jesse Ackerman, who is now the assistant strength coach at Florida. He was the head strength coach for the Atlanta Falcons, and great guy, tough as nails, man, tough as nails. I talked with him about training, and he's the one who talked to me about pulls. He says, Coach, do you do cleans from the floor or from the hang? I said, both. And I said, we also do them from below the knee too. And he says, when you do a clean from the floor, is your first pull to your knees is what normally is acceptable for your first, what's called the first pull. He says, do you do a controlled pull? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And he goes, let me ask you something, Coach. Where does that apply to football? Oh gosh. So I'm like, yeah, you're right. I never thought of that. He says, yeah, we don't teach that. He says, we'd rather just pull from the floor with a tendo unit and deadlift it. And I'm like, so I started playing with it. And oh my gosh, I had so much fun. My training partner and I, he was a former wide receiver, so he's way more explosive than I was. But he'd crush these weights. And, we're sitting there going, maybe I was in the mid 300s, at the speed we were going, trying to accomplish. I wasn't going very heavy. But for me, it was heavy, at the time, it was just a few years ago. So I thought, man, this felt phenomenal. And I had some football players that were doing doubles with 500 pounds. I mean, it was amazing. Then on top of that, I had a guy a freshman who played, he had trouble doing 225. I took him aside and I said, son, coming from a dead start, like coming off the line and being explosive and powerful is what you need to be really good at. And right now, you don't come off very fast. And he goes, this is the weight room. We're talking football field. I said, dude, we're talking basic physics, okay? And you're not accomplishing it. And I says, I'll help you, but you got to be a little more open to let me help you out here, And he didn't. He ended up transferring. But, it got, and I went to the two guys that doing 500 pounds. I said, guys, I'm a little concerned about you doing 500 pounds in season. They said, Coach, we can't feel it. And I said, well, I can't feel 365. So, yeah, okay, I can live with that. And, for them, it was light. So when people say 400's heavy, 300's heavy, 500's heavy, heavy is a relative term, When I was benching heavy, shoot, 315, you could, when I was good and warmed up, I couldn't feel it, People asked me what I did for the combine test with 225. I said, well, I did 50 one time, but it was with 315.
The pull is something that I think has helped our athletes tremendously. And I don't know why I got stumbled on that, but we sumo, I think that works really good for athletes for that outer development of the hip. If you was to set that up again, would you split conventional and sumo, or would you pick one or the over?
I did both. And I did the sumo. If you watch the sumo carefully, you're actually strengthening the legs for your change of direction. And you're getting both legs at the same time. I mean, look at the position. It is the same position. And by the way, I'm going to throw this out there. For those people who say when they're running, they slip when they touch the line and stuff, you don't slip, okay? Take a cleat, pound that in the turf, and watch how hard it is for that cleat to slide. It don't slide. What happens is you're overreaching to touch that line, and you're moving yourself out of your center of gravity so that your center of gravity is too far forward and you don't have any contact with the ground, and you're going to be slow coming out of your turn because of it. We had a special technique. We taught our kids how to change directions faster. But I think sumo deadlifting is an excellent exercise. I don't think you necessarily need to have to do it for speed, but you just definitely, I think doing it in like for a set of 5, I think is phenomenal for developing change direction.
Now, just in this last little bit of, well, since I've been on here with you, the passion for what you do and what you've done overflows. Burnout's still going to happen, even as passionate as you are. Overcoming the burnout of a passion that you asked for, you prayed for, you wanted this, and it still gets heaped on you. How do you overcome that burnout and keep going forward?
That was difficult at times because I had to get away, and I'm not very good at that. I was really bad. My wife used to joke and say that she would make sure she sent me a letter to let me know when she was going to die, so I'd make sure I was there. I was in that weight room all the time, all day, all done. It didn't matter. I had to be there to make sure my team got better. And like I said, I was 70 hours a week was common. I worked from Father's Day till the end of football season. I got 1 day off a year during that time. All summer, all fall, 1 day. I've been talking Saturdays and Sundays. I had to go in and go to work on Sundays. I just wanted I wanted excellence, and to do that, it had to come from me going and setting the pace, setting the tone. And so I didn't mind it at all, but I know that if you don't get away, and especially if, like when we were at University of Washington, we were on the quarter system there. So classes started right after January 1st. Well, we would go to a bowl game and play on January 1st, fly home, and start the weight workouts the next day. There were no breaks. There was no chance for us to get away. During the summer, when all the other coaches were getting a little bit of a break and catching their wind, you're just gassed, man. You were so sick of seeing those same guys putting up with the same attitudes to crybabies, And I just kept going, man, it was a cumulative, And I could handle it for about 3 years. And then finally, after about every third year, I'd have to go and say, I'm going on a vacation, a real vacation, like 10 days. I'm going to Europe or something like that, and I'm getting away from here. Of course, they were like, well, we need you here. Well, you know what? You need me here at my best. But time for meditation and prayer is huge because it's that daily resetting of your mind that allows you to stay passionate and hungry. That passion, it doesn't come from inside, from you. It comes from God, And so you got to go and work on feeding yourself to keep that passion there. And as you get older, I mean, sure, when you're young, you can go. But, it's like lifting. I tell these young guys in college, you better go for the big lifts when you can, because when you get done with college, you're going to get a job, you're going to get married, you're going to have kids, and every one of those things are going to sap energy out of you. And well, they should. You should give your energy to those things. But you're not going to have the same energy that you had for lifting that you're going to have later. That you're not going to have the same energy then as you would now. And the same thing is true with coaching. You single guys, they can go all day long and they're fine. And young guys, but you get older and it gets tough. But the older you get, a lot of football coaches want these young tech guys and raw guys. And I tell all the time, stop. That's not where you want to go. I mean, what you want is a man of character, because the head football coach and the strength coach are the only two coaches on an entire football staff that work with the whole football team. Nobody else works with the whole football team, coaches the whole football team. The biggest influence on a football team is the head coach and the strength coach. And when you want your football team to have character, and you want your football team to know how to fight and how not to give up, how to find a way to get it done when there's no energy left, you better have a man teaching them, or woman, I don't care, woman can teach you just as well, how to do this the right way. And so many times, someone told me, they said the only reason football coaches don't want men of character as their strength coach is because they don't have character and they don't want to be held accountable. But I'm telling you, if you want a great strength coach, and I know several of them, Rusty Witt down at Tulane, He's a man of character. Not ex. He was a former a Green Beret. Tough as nails. Man, he's tough. And you put him around those football players, and it's no wonder his football teams seem to have a pattern of success. And you put him around a guy rah guy who might be just like compromising, don't understand work ethic, don't understand the capabilities of what a human being can do. What should they should be able to do? You're never going to see your football team achieve. My football team always overachieved, always. And every football coach I worked with had the best seasons the years I worked with them. And it was just, I just felt like I was able to contribute and help out, So I think that what we do is crucial, but I think who we are is just as important.
You're kind of setting the stage for the next question I had highlighted here. So the environment creates the athletes. And in today's society, you as a strength coach have to create roadblocks, obstacles, something for them to learn how to handle adversity.
Yep.
Later on in your career, did you seem like you maybe had to do more of that than earlier on in your career?
Yeah. You become more aware of the roadblocks that are out there, and so you learn what you can do to eliminate them. And Coach Don James, who was the head football coach at the University of Washington when we were national champions, he's also the mentor to a couple pretty good football coaches, Nick Saban and Urban Meyer. I don't know if you heard of them, but they became pretty good football coaches. But he was their mentor, and his philosophy was, my team is going to make fewer mistakes than your team, and when your team makes a mistake, we're going to beat. And he not only held us accountable, the team accountable, he held us accountable to that same. Everybody was held to that same standard of accountability, to the point where I was in a staff meeting, and on a Monday after a home game. Now, in a home game, we all stayed at a hotel 10 minutes away from the stadium, and we had a 10-minute bus ride with an escort to the stadium. Just short little drive. Well, Monday morning, Coach James says, on the bus ride here, I turned my reading light on, and my light didn't work. I'm thinking, okay, so, and I didn't think anything of it. And the director of football operations said, Coach, don't worry about it. I'll look into it. We'll make sure we get that taken care of. Coach James says, no, fire the bus company. If their lights aren't going to work, how do I know the bus is going to run? How do I know I'm going to get my team to the game? I'm not taking that chance. Find me another bus company. Well, that message went loud and clear to everybody in that room. And if a light didn't work, he's going to fire the bus company. I mean, hey, you better get your act together. And I mean, the attention to detail was unbelievable. But our teams did so much better because of it. And I am a believer that in life, attention to detail, preparation is the key to you being successful. You don't have to be talented. Like I said, I can't sing, okay? I have no music ability whatsoever. But when I was in the second grade, my mom and dad made me take guitar lessons. I hated it, okay? I hated it. But I did. But every time we go to see Auntie or Grandma, Mom and Dad wanted to see their money's worth and said, hey, play them a song. Well, so I learned one song. I could play that one song really, really well. But I couldn't play anything else. So I go to my guitar class one day. The teacher says, we're going to have a contest. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be so embarrassing. I'm horrible. And he says, and this is the song we're going to play. And it was the one song I knew. And I got, I was the last one. And everybody else played it. And I got to be my turn. And I whizzed through it. I played it like I knew it inside and out. And he looked at me and he goes, Billy, that's what he used to call me when I was a kid. I had no idea you were so good. I didn't know you could do that well. I'm just smiling. He goes, you won. I went, yay. I wasn't the best in the class. I was by far the worst in the class, but I was prepared. And that's the key to success. It taught me a valuable lesson in life. The more I'm prepared, the more, and when I'm prepared and I get the opportunity, there's where my chances are to be successful. And the preparation isn't about being successful. The preparation's in the joy of preparing. You got to enjoy it. It's hard work. There's nothing wrong with hard work. Hard work's good for us. It's good that we learn how to suffer a little bit and work hard, because that's when good things going to, maybe not great things going to happen, but good things going to happen. And you're going to get yourself to the place you want to be because you work hard. And there's got to be a balance there. Like I've said before, it's just like caffeine. You got to learn how to take your time away for that moment of quietness too, so that you can allow yourself to generate yourself and rethink about who you are and what your purposes are. Family get-togethers. I love them. I love them because nothing motivated me more to lift hard than to have a family get-together. And I know people might think that's crazy, but it got me around my family, the people who love me, the people who looked up to me, and I found that I was kind of like an anchor in their life, a rock in their life. And they wanted to strive to be more like what I was trying to strive to do. And so I was helping them, and I'd be so fired up. Oh my gosh, I couldn't wait to go work out after a family get together. So, I think that a balance in life, I know people who don't do a very good job of being a husband or father. And I think they're really missing out. I think that they're really not as balanced as they should be. I had a football coach at a school. I won't even tell you where, because this is the most insane thing I've ever been asked. No, I've been asked two insane things. He came to me and said, "Bill, you're not going to believe it." A football coach asked me this. He said, "We need you to leave your kids and divorce your wife." I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "We want you to prove to us that you're the man for the job." I'm like, "I'm the man for the job. I can get the job done, and I can take care of my wife and kids." I said, "I noticed that's not true in your situation." He goes, "Well, I have a different role than you do." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think so." And I says, and besides that, I think it's important that the football players see that I'm able to, coach at a high level, at the most intense level there is, and still have a balanced life outside of this weight room and outside the job. And I couldn't believe he asked me to do that. I just thought, wow, but there are people out there who think you need to have this imbalanced life. And it's just, no, a balanced life will allow you to become more of who you should be than if you go and have the singular focus. I think the same thing's true with young athletes. I think they should do every sport they can do. I don't think they should be a specialist. That comes later on in the career, but not when they're young, because you don't know what you're going to be doing great. I thought I was going to be a football player. I thought I was going to be a baseball player. Turned out I was a track and field athlete and a power lifter. I didn't even know there was powerlifting,
I had heard you talk about this in a podcast, and it hit me that really makes a lot of sense. And earlier in the podcast, you were talking about you want to be the strongest in season. Well, just like Usain Bolt carrying his acceleration out in his sprint, he was faster at the end of the race and then everybody else was getting slower. So the gap was double what it normally had been. So by you getting your football players stronger, I heard you mention that if anybody else has any bit of weakness that you're playing, you've doubled the distance.
Yep. The gap got huge the month of November when I was at Liberty. For the month of November, for a 10-year period, we lost a total of that entire month, a total of 4 games in 10 years. We dominated late in the season because of the fact that we were getting stronger. The way the program was set up, after coaching in the NFL, I realized that I got to make them strong in season. It can't be detrimental to practice or the game, of course. It can enhance the practice and the game if you do it correctly. And so that's what I did. And it took me a while to figure it out because I had to be very cautious about the choices I made. But I found out that you can make the kids stronger. And it's little by little by little by little that you do it. And the whole off season is to set up that stage so that in season they can do this type of training. And I use training camp as the transition period. So like during the summer, I had a certain program where we were taking, let's say, a minute 45 seconds for between every set of benches. Okay. So you had a turnover. You had a minute 45 to do your set of bench and your partner do his set of bench. And then in another minute 45, we're going to start another set. Okay. That's a long rest for us. So what I did during training camp is I actually did the exact same workout 4 weeks in a row. But what I did was instead of a minute 45, I drop it to a minute 35, minute 25, minute 15. Then I was ready to go and do the same turnovers as we would do in season. I would prepare them for it. And I utilized the conditioning factor of what football season was what they were going through during training camp. And to them, they didn't notice any difference at all. It was cake for them. Every week they've handled the weight really well. And then when we started the season, then I would go and say, all right, on the bench press, you can go down 5 pounds, put a circle around it. So you can go down 2.5 pounds, or you can go up 2.5 pounds, or you can go up 5 pounds. There was no staying the same. You had to go up or down. Everybody went up 5 pounds. Everybody went up 5 pounds. And you do that 12, 13 weeks in a row, all of a sudden you're doing 50, 60 pounds more than you were doing at the beginning of the year. I had kids bench pressing the personal records at the end of the year in a workout just like it was nothing, you know? And when we tested in December, they were always stronger in December than they were in July. That's basically unheard of. But you can do it. It's very complicated, but you can do it. And I really believed in it.
We've talked about some great moments in your life, but life is not all victories. I've heard you talk about this a little bit. It's not all victories. It's not all peaks. Attacking moments with doubt or shaky faith. How were you able to make some of the decisions you made? I know you have a healthy prayer life, but you're gonna leave Washington or, leave some of these programs to go to other programs. Well, there's nothing sure there. You're kind of comfortable where you're at. What helped you to make these moves?
Well, every time I made a move, it was clearly from God. All right. When I went to the Seahawks, we were having our hardwood floors refinished, and we were at Ocean Shores in Washington, and we're walking along the beach, and I turned to my son on a Sunday morning, and I said, you know what? Within the next 2 weeks, the Seahawks are going to call me. He goes, how do you know that? And I said, I don't know. I just walk in here. I know it. I just know they're going to call me in the next 2 weeks. Well, I got the 2 weeks wrong, okay? It wasn't 2 weeks. It was 2 phone calls when we got home. Bill, call me. We need you to start tomorrow. Oh, I couldn't believe it. And every time something happened like that, it was so clear. I knew it was the right decision. Coming back to Liberty was tough, but it was a passion. It was tough to leave the NFL because I knew there was an opportunity to make a lot of money there. I had such a passion for Liberty football because I understood what it represented and what it was all about. Dr. Falwell heard I was in town when I was with the Seahawks and called me in his office and asked if he could meet with me and my mentor. And he said to us, he says, we've achieved every goal I've ever dreamed of. We got great music, great sports, all except for football. He says, we're not getting where we need to be in football. He said, Bill, I'm going to ask a huge favor of you. I'm going to ask you to walk away from the NFL and come to Liberty. I said, Dr. Falwell, Liberty is one of the 5 worst football teams in America in one FCS. I said, the Seahawks, we might go to the Super Bowl. And I said, I don't want to miss the Super Bowl. He said, I understand. He says, but let me explain to you why I want you here, why I want a championship football team. It's not just to have a great football team. He said, I want to reach the world for Christ. And I was like, okay, I understand. I'm all for this. And I said, that's been my passion. He says, when Virginia Tech wanted to have increased school enrollment and increase academic standards, he says, the president didn't go to the recruiting office and say, hey, go get us better students. He said, they went to the football coach and said, here's some money, go win football games, and we'll increase the student enrollment and raise the academic standards. From there, he says, we'll go and we'll send out young champions for Christ to reach the world. And I thought to myself, I said, you know what? That's been my passion, is to reach the world for Christ. So here I get to play a key role in making this happen. I said, okay, I'll come. And that's why I came. That's why I walked away from the NFL, was to reach the world for Christ. And what's funny was the first time we ever won a conference championship ever in the school's history, the following year, they had to limit the enrollment. And then a couple years later, we went to the playoffs, did very well. The following year, they raised the academic standards right afterwards. And I went, that was confirmation to me. That was confirmation that I was following God's will and direction, because we were helping reach the world for Christ. And I was very, very, very thankful that I got to play that role and helping the football team go from FCS to FBS. And now, geez, who knows where they're going to end up at? They're doing wonderful now.
I've had you on quite a while. I have a ton more questions, and we're not going to get to them all.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we can if you want. I just didn't want to keep you on here all night.
No, I got time.
We'll keep rolling then, Coach. This is great for me. I just didn't want you to feel like I was just holding you to a microphone.
No, I didn't even look at the time. I didn't know what time it was.
I cleared my schedule for this, so as long as you're good, we'll keep rolling.
Okay.
I had first heard about you, and you had talked about Louis Simmons. Was you had an excerpt on Westside versus the World. You were talking about some of the things that Westside had done for your program and you personally. Mm-hmm. What led you to Louis Simmons? What sent you down that rabbit hole?
Okay. First and foremost, my mentor, Dave Williams, he is the one who told Louis about bands. All right. So my mentor was cutting edge. We were doing triphasic training in the 80s because of him, not because of me, because of him. He was so far 30, 40 years, 50 years ahead of his time. All right. And he liked to experiment and try new things. Louis started writing these articles for Powerlifting USA. And I started, the first one, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gold, because so many people that I would talk to, strength athletes, I'd ask, I say, hey, I've been trying that bench routine. They'd look at me like, what? Why? I said, well, it's your bench routine. They go, no, it's not. They go, I just wrote that up so I could get some money from the magazine. I never did that. I did parts of it, but that's not what I do. I'm not going to give away my routine. And I'm like, well, darn, and there was no good information out there. And Louis started sharing, and I went, he's right. That makes sense. And I'll tell you, especially at first, Louis was, man. Then Louis kind of got off on his tangents and started taking ownership of some things that I don't think he should have. Okay, nothing wrong with him. Okay, I love Louis. I love him. I appreciate him very much. But like him and I got in a debate one time on sets of twos on the squats for a dynamic day or a bench press, triples on the bench press. And I said, well, Louis, the manual says you can do up to 6 reps. He goes, no, you can't. I said, yeah, you can. I said, what if you had a volleyball player that was ineffective? They weren't very proficient in the weight room. They can move that bar 3 times, 6 times just as fast as they move it 3 times. I said, the bar doesn't slow down because they're not lifting heavy enough, and they need a little bit more emphasis towards hypertrophy anyway. He was like, okay, you're right. But it took a little while for Louis to kind of warm up to my ideas a little bit. Like he always had you out for breakfast when you went to visit him. He said, Louis, tell me what you think is the single most valuable exercise to do for a powerlifter and for an athlete. And he goes, same exercise. Okay, what is it? He said, good mornings. I said, okay, I could understand that, and I would agree with you, except for one thing, Louis. I said, the good morning only gives you resistance at the bottom position. And when you stand straight up, there's no resistance. I said, if you go on Sornek's back attack, and I mean, I don't even know if I was working for Sornex at the time, but I said, if you do the Sornex back attack, I said, you get resistance at the bottom and the top, and it forces your glutes to finish contraction. And he goes, excellent point. And they had a back attack in the weight room there at Westside. And he said, "Everybody, you're doing the back attack today." So I felt pretty good about that one. But yeah, I was really confident in sharing things with Louis towards the end. But for a while he would, you know, he was hard. He was stuck in his ways. But he told me towards the end, he said that he would prefer to work with athletes than he did powerlifters. He said he really enjoyed the athleticism and development. Like he had a heptathlete from Ohio State in their training. Butch Reynolds, who broke the world record in the 400 meters. He back in the 90s. He beat Lee Evans' world record, who happened to be the 400 meter coach at the University of Washington at the time, and broke his world record. And so I'm like, man, what'd you do? And he told me, he explained to me what he did and how he trained. And I was like, man, that's awesome, man. What he did is they did 185, like 18 sets of 2 with a 30-second turnover. So every 30 seconds they did a set. And he said what it was going to do what they were trying to do was develop the lactic acid tolerance to allow him to sprint that last 100 meters. And I don't know if you've ever ran a 400-meter race in competition. I used to be a runner. I'll tell you something. That last 100 meters, man, it looks like they're walking away with that finish line. You're like, what are they doing? Why is that thing getting further away? I mean, it's just that monkey jumps on your back, and it's like everything you got. And so you can train to prevent that to happen. And so when I started doing the 6 sets of 2 with the short turnovers, I remember going, wait a minute, this is as close as I ever felt to playing football. And I said, the fatigue, I ran all the time. But the fatigue level wasn't coming from running. It just didn't feel the same. But when I did those squats, I said, holy smokes, this is what I felt like when I played football. I felt like an All-American the first play. Second play, I was All-State. Third play, I was All-Conference. Fourth play, I was a guy on the football field. And I mean, I love to run. I was in great shape. But, man, I just couldn't duplicate that same powerful, explosive power, energy that I had. So that's what Louis shared that with us. And I'm like, man, I picked that up the first time I went up there to train with him. I was just like, man. And the movie, what happened was, we went to visit him, and this is before the internet, and I forgot to bring my Powerlifting USA magazine, which had the address of the gym, and I didn't know how to get a hold of Louis. I didn't have his number. I didn't have his address. And here we are in Columbus, Ohio, and we didn't know what to do. So I said, I'll tell you what, I'll call some gyms. I bet you they know. There's somebody at that one of them gyms will know. And so I'd call the gyms, and sometimes they would hang up on me as soon as I asked the question, or they'd tell me, no, we're not telling you because we're not going to be liable for what happens to you. And I'm like, I'm an invited guest. It's cool. They wouldn't tell me. Finally, one guy says, I'm going to tell you, but you don't know where you got this from. Like, are you kidding me? So that's the story about visiting Louis that first time. And boy, I'll tell you what, they were huge and strong and getting after it. And we talk about the environment. The guys that trained at Westside they've told me later on, they told me recently, they said it wasn't the training program necessarily that made us so strong. They said it was the environment. They said we were trying to kill each other. They said, well, a couple of them told me, they said, I didn't care if my training partner fell over dead. He says, as long as I beat him, that's all I matter. I said, I was hoping he'd break his leg or arm, and so I could beat him. I didn't, and I'm like, well, he watched us work out, and he's like, you guys are disgusting. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, you're cheering each other on. And I said, yeah, I want him at his best, and then I want to kick his butt. And that, when I went to World's Strongest Man a couple of years ago, and I just went and watched and helped a friend of mine, and they were all the same way. They were like, man, we want you at your best. I hope you're at your best because, and then I want to beat you. Because I don't want to go and make the excuse of hearing that you were hurt or whatever. He said, I want to see you at your best, and then I want to compete with you. And I love that, man.
There's a few things you said in there, and I took some notes on it. I think I had them, but we'll visit them anyhow. Time sets before VBT. I mean, I know you had tendos, but
no, before I did it before tendos.
So, yeah, I was looking at time set, and I'm looking at it now for people that don't have, me and some other coaches have talked about this. Me and Tucker C have been talking about this. If you don't have VBT, implementing time sets to push the compensatory acceleration, but then at the same time, conditioning for the sport you're playing. Is that a pretty effective way that you saw in your career of getting two birds with one stone?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the type of strength that you need to play football. I mean, I joke about this all the time, but when I was coaching with the Seahawks, I'm benching 800 pounds in competition. Sean Alexander and Heath Evans comes to me and they said, Coach, you're 330 pounds, you bench 800 pounds. Our starting nose guard is in a wheelchair and cannot play this Sunday. We need you to play this Sunday. I'm like, I laugh. I'm like, dude, I'm like 41 or whatever. I'm 42 years old. I'm like, no, I'm too old. They said, you're only a year older than Jerry Rice, and Jerry was on the team. I'm like, yeah, there's a big difference between me and Jerry, okay? And they were like, no, Coach, you only have to play 3 or 4 plays. I'm like, in a row? I'm like, I'd be dead by the time I went through practice for the week. I'd be like, oh my gosh, thank goodness the game's here. I'm too tired. But, they said, we're going to go ask Coach Holmgren if you could, play Sunday. And I'm like, okay. Well, Coach Holmgren never came down and asked me to play. And, so I joke and say, either you got to bench more than 800, which I know no player on the team benched over 800, or being that type of strong isn't what it's all about. And what I explain to people is this. If I had a ball throwing competition against a quarterback, he'd kick my butt. All right. But if I threw a baseball and he threw a wiffle ball, I'd throw it further because the wiffle ball's too light. He can't absorb that force. Okay. So let's be fair and we'll switch it around. This time I'm going to throw a softball, but he's going to throw a shot put. Well, again, I'm going to kick his butt because he can't throw a shot put that far, and I can throw a softball further than he can throw a shot put. So what I try to explain to people is you got to go in the weight room and you got to find where your baseballs and softballs are. Yes, maybe 5% of the time you're going to lift wiffle balls. Maybe 5% of the time you're going to lift shot puts. But most of the time you're going to be with your baseballs and your softballs. The key to being able to do that is have a trained eye, but having some type of velocity-based measuring device is the key because you can tell your athletes all the time, all you want. You got to move fast, you got to move fast, you got to move fast. I'm moving as fast as I can. You put that tendo on it, and instantly they're competing with that. And just a side note, the difference between Division III to FCS Division I and the NFL football players is simply one thing, not talent. It's the competitive drive. The guys in the NFL love to compete. I mean, that's just who they are. And you can't, they're in the weight room, they're competing every single day for money, like $200 for this, $200 for that every day because they love that that pressure of the competition. And that's what raised them to the top. Not necessarily talent. And there were guys that you saw on the team at the beginning of the year, they're so talented, and they cut them, and you just go, why? Because it wasn't just about talent, It's about competitive drive. I told college football players all the time, you don't have a competitive drive, make sure you go to class, make sure you get good grades, because you ain't playing professional football. And they're like, oh, no, I'm like, sorry, that's the truth, I would go and learn how to compete. People who are afraid to fail, oh man, I'll tell you something. I feel sorry for you. You're never going to make it. No way. No way. You are embarrassed to fail. You won't try. And the only thing you're going to do the whole time is thinking about failing. What are people going to think when they fail? You can't even have that thought. All you got to do is have hope, And Ross told me this. His brother told me this. You cannot have hope if you don't work. Because I talk about work all the time. Men work. That's what we do. That's what we're supposed to do. And he says, Coach, you can't have hope unless you work. I said, okay, let me hear about this. He goes, you're not working, you're wishing. And you don't need to wish you win. You need to hope. You have to have that hope that you can win, because that hope is what's going to get you through those tough times, those hard moments, is knowing that you have a chance, that you have hope. And hope isn't just this beautiful love, peace, and hope. Hope is a very powerful word, and very powerful when you're in the trenches of working hard. Because I'm going to tell you something, every single guy becomes selfish when they get tired. All right? We all do. We're all sitting there going, man, I think this is stupid. I don't think we should be doing this. He's doing too much. I don't care who's coaching you, who's doing it. You all have doubt. And when you have that doubt, you're no longer buying in. And I tell our kids all the time, I said, if you don't take ownership of this program and what we do, it ain't going to transfer to the football field like you want it to. If I'm cramming it down your throat, it don't taste very good, okay? Sit back, enjoy the flavor, enjoy the taste, and enjoy the process of this. Because what I've told our players was this: yes, I want to win, and winning is not that hard to win. But what was important to me was were they different men because of our experience together? Did I help them become a man of God? If I didn't help them become a man of God, and I only helped them to win, how superficial can that be? I mean, that's exercise profiteth little. All right. But if I help them become better men and become better fathers and husbands, then I was a success. And that's one of the reasons why I left the Seahawks as to go to Liberty, was I knew I'd give the freedom to share Christ in the way you have to be successful in life. And I didn't really, you're not going to get that opportunity at a secular place most time.
You answered a few questions I had in there, but I had one left from the previous. I heard it may have been Josh Bryant's podcast you were talking about this on, but using VBT, you're looking for the one rep that matters. Whether you're programming 3 reps or 5 reps, the 4 reps before the 5th rep are just a means to an end to get to the 5th rep that causes the adaptation. Yeah. I think I've stumbled on that in our training out here. When did that click and you were just like, that's the rep? Everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't know when that clicked, but all of a sudden I tried to explain it to people, and then I went, the only rep that matters is the last rep. All right, that's the only thing that matters. You do a set of 8, and the first 4 fly up, and the last 2 come up slow. Did you train for speed? Because everybody thinks if you do 8s with lighter weight, you're training for speed. But if the last 2 reps come up slow, no, you got slower. You train that dog to sit and not sickle. Think about this. If I took you out on the track and we're going to work for speed, okay? I'm going to run you for speed. I'm going to run, say, 60 yards. All right? And you get on the line and you jog down to the 60-yard line, and you get to the other side and you start yelling and screaming, I did it. It was easy. Everybody look at you like you're a moron, all right? Of course it was easy. You didn't run it very hard. And at that point in time, if I wanted to get a good workout out of it, I wouldn't turn and go, we're going to go sprint a mile. You're going to run that mile as hard as you can. And I'm going to tell you what, it's going to burn. It's going to hurt. You might even puke, Now, that's the mentality we have sometimes as strength coaches, all right, as coaches. But let me ask you this. Is he going to get faster? No, not at all. At all. We know that. That's not even questionable, all right? But we go in the weight room, and the bar is moving fast. We think because of that bodybuilding, we got to get those extra reps because I can do it. That doesn't matter if you can do it. If it's not fast, it's not going to transfer to the football field. So the type of strength that you develop is specific to what your sport is, and it's got to be done in a fashion that's going to transfer to the field. And if you are explosive, powerful athlete, then you're going to have to do some powerful, explosive exercises. Now, the key is in doing velocity-based training is understanding the weak component of velocity-based training. Most people will tell you how great a philosophy is, and I'll ask them, what's the weak component? Because every philosophy has a weak component. And if you sit there and go, I don't know, then you don't know that philosophy as well as you think you do. You know all the positive aspects. But what I found was on the bench press in particular, that the people that did the velocity-based training with me, like I would do a setup 5 or 6. Now I could do that weight 10 or 12 times or 8 times, but I would stop at 5 or 6, and people go, you could do more. And I'm like, but it's not at the tempo. It would fry my nervous system, you know? And so you got to go and pick the right amount of weight and move the weight the right speed to develop the strength that's applicable to your sport. And if what happens is, though, on the bench press, is you develop a lockout problem. And the reason you do that is because there's not enough resistance coming off your chest. Now, as soon as you have a lockout problem, people are going to do exactly what I did. Go do board presses and pin, lockouts and all that kind of stuff. And it didn't make a difference. And it wasn't until I realized in years ago, I learned this as a coach, probably 50 years ago, 40 years ago. What you see is the problem isn't the problem. What occurs prior to that is causing the problem. And what causes the problem is something that probably happens prior to that. And so when you see a lockout problem, it's not always that you're weak at the lockout. It could be that you're not generating enough speed off the chest, and then it shows up in the lockout. Josh Bryant uses this saying all the time. He says, when you miss a max, he says, sometimes you just run out of time, and the heavier the weight gets, the shorter period of time you have to exhibit your strength. 1,100 pounds either goes up fast or it don't go up at all. It ain't going up slow. All right. It has to go up fast. Here's a great situation. You do a set of 10. It's stupid lightweight. You'll lay there and go really, 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 really slow, and it don't bother you. You do all 10. Put on a significantly more amount of weight. What do we do instinctively? We go faster. Why? Because we're going to run out of time. So now let's take this a step further. The 225 bench press, NFL bench press test. I put a stopwatch on it. I always like looking at things from different perspectives. And I found that 35 seconds plus or minus 5 seconds, you're done. Whether you do 12 or 60, you're done. So the key is to get as strong as you can get and learn how to move the bar as fast as possible. Now, there are some tricks to how you set up, how you breathe. Like I do my first 32 reps on the 225 bench press test, or 315 I did for 50. I do it on my first breath of air. I'd hold my breath the whole time. But I'm moving that bar so fast. And people say, well, if you could do 315 for 50, you should do 225 for a lot more. Remember, at 35 seconds, I'm done. I can only move the bar X speed. So I'm going to run out of time shortly afterwards, well, what weight I have, as long as I can move the bar the same speed. So I think that it's interesting to find that you have to go and incorporate some other things in your training to allow yourself to make sure that you don't develop this weak components, because we're all, Louis said it for years, we're only as strong as our weakest link. That is angle of strength, type of strength. If your bench, 1,000 from your chest to halfway up, but you bench 500 from your halfway up to your lockout, your max is 500. You don't even have any idea you're capable of benching 1,000, until you could develop that weak component. The same thing with starting strength, acceleration strength, all those different types of strength, stabilization strength. I see a lot of guys who can't stabilize and hold the weight properly because they lack the stabilization strength. But on the bench press, just a big tip out there for you guys, pull-ups are the key to developing stabilization and a big bench press. Sets of 6s, with weight, without weights, 3 sets, 6 sets, 5 days a week. The more you can do pull-ups, the more your bench press will go up. Same thing. One-arm rows are the second best exercise I found out there to do. All sets of 6s. You build your back and your bench goes right with it, hand in hand.
You said something early on in that, and now I have a question. So you can see your mini max. Let's say you've taped it or you have a coach there, you see the mini max. Is the first place to go is backwards, where people tend to go forward? So you say the mini max is 3 boards off your chest. That's where you're hitting it. We always look at, okay, well, let's do a 3 board, let's do a 4 board. Should we look at more at the starting strength off the chest and just kind of work backwards and see what happens?
Oh, I don't. I do most of my athletes. We do everything off the chest. We didn't do a whole lot with boards. I kind of got away from all the bands of boards, to be honest with you, with the training, myself and with athletes. But I would have them pause. What we did is we found that our shoulders are lots more stable and stronger, and we had fewer injuries for the guys that touched real soft on their chest, and they made longer progress in their progressions. So what we did is we teach our guys how to bench press with fettuccine, and you put a piece of dry fettuccine on their chest. You have them come down, touch the fettuccine, and lock the weight out, and you can't bounce the bar. And no matter how loud that music is, you can hear that fettuccine break, and you'll hear those guys, I can't believe it, that one. And then developing artificial acceleration by letting the hips move is another no-no. What I did is I took probably a 6-foot length of rope, 1/4-inch rope, and I tie a 5-pound plate to it. And then I pull the rope across the bench and I put it under my butt, and the plate is suspended off the floor. If my butt comes up, plate falls on the floor, I know my butt came up. If I need to work, and one of my philosophies was increased range of motion training. All right. If I want to be really strong at the bench press, then what I did, the best exercises to help my bench go along was move my grip in slightly and increase the range of motion. What I could do also was I would go and put a 10-pound plate on a strap, like a tie-down strap, and then you couldn't feel that strap, and the plate, you had to push that thing down to keep your butt down, which then imitated me going through a weight loss. Okay. And my butt would get smaller when I lose weight, which changed the angle of my bench, changed the whole dynamic. So what I did is I used that strap to prepare myself by increasing the range of motion. Changing my body weight also, by the way, was one of the factors in helping me get really, really strong too. Is if I got too big, because people tell you, Louis told us forever, if you want to lift more weight, you just have to gain weight. Well, that's true up to a point, and then you get fat and nasty and can't do anything. What I found was when I was in the off season, I looked like I was training for bodybuilding. Not that I did bodybuilding exercise, but I would increase my work capacity, and I would go and increase my cardio, and also really, really clean up my diet. And I would purposely lose weight. And sometimes I'd lose 20, 25 pounds. And then I would hold it for a short time till I stabilized that body weight. And then when I started my training cycle for the competition, I would slowly gain the weight back. Now, what that did was it allowed me to recover because I was getting the caloric intake that I needed. And the worst thing in the world is for you, on the bench press in particular, is for you to cut weight going into a meet. Oh my gosh, you're like, all that hard work is gone. I only cared if I was strong one day. That was the day of the meet. You could come in, work out, kick my butt. I don't care. But when we go to the meet, I'm going to kick your butt. I'm going to lift more weight. And it happened. All my training partners, same thing. Oh, coach, I was there with you neck and neck. I don't understand. You outlifted me by 300 pounds. Yeah, because on the day it mattered, I used that preparation to get ready for the day that mattered. You won the little battles. I won the war.
I believe I watched a podcast with you, Brennan Lilly, when you had started at Sornex.
Yeah.
And you had said something in there that made me think. So my grandpa passed away earlier this year, and he left me. It's the first reproduction they made up in St. Joe, and it's a 36 caliber flintlock.
Oh, you got my heart there.
Yeah, I was going to bring it in here, and when this is over, maybe I'll bring it in and I'll kind of show it the best I can through the camera. But where I'm going with this is programming and loading your athletes is just the same as loading a muzzle loader. It's a process.
You did not steal that from me, did you?
Yes, you said it. Yeah, you said it in the Soar Next podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. I was going to say, I use that illustration all the time. You, particularly a muzzle loader, you got to go through them stages precisely. You can't skip one. But when you do it right, woo, baby, that thing's lethal, man. So, yes, there's no shortcuts. You have to learn to do every detail right. And it gets to be almost selfish at times because you have to go and, like, my wife and I, we go on vacations, and first thing I do is I have to look up, find a gym, go train at. They're at the beach. She's like, "Where are you going to do?" And I'm going to work out. Oh, okay. Well, meet us when you're done. She knew I had to get. People say stuff like, "Oh, you deserve a day off." No, I don't. The day off meant if my kids, any of my athletes missed a day, I made them start the whole training cycle over again. No, that's when you get hurt. You get hurt when you miss a day of working out. Now, there are times where you go light. There's nothing wrong with having a light day, but, and vacation time was a good time, but you just don't miss workouts ever. You got to do the little things right. You miss a meal. Oh my gosh. A meal's a workout. You miss a meal, you could set yourself back. I remember one time I don't know why I was close to making 275, and I just wanted to make weight in the morning and do a big bench workout to see where I was at. It wasn't official, but I cut the weight hard that day before and probably didn't do it the right way like I know now. And man, I killed my training for weeks because I had a day where I did not eat enough food. Yes, when I was done competing, I was sick of eating. I did not want to eat any more food. I couldn't wait to get that part of my training, that part of my life over with, because I was sick. 50 years of stuffing food down my throat when I didn't feel like eating. As soon as you weren't hungry, you start, as soon as you felt like I wasn't full, I started eating again. I mean, as often as I could. How many people ask me how many calories I took in a day? I have no idea, but it was a lot. And I was up to 340. It got as big as I could get to see if I could push that weight up.
This I thought was very unique, and I think the weight room does this maybe more so than anything else, but creating come from behind athletes as opposed to the athletes that you're watching and there's a good chance they can't hold on. So it's tough to be in that position when you're watching some of your athletes and know it's going to be touch and go if they can hold on, but creating those come behind athletes, that's where it's at. So how were you able to do that?
First of all, you got 8 months out of the year to develop the mentality of a football team. Okay. And that competitive drive has to become part of your personality so that you understand, and you just make sure that everybody understands it. Because like I said earlier, the really, really, really talented guys don't want to be held accountable. They just want to live off their talent. I think they're great because of that. But the fact of the matter is that we're not all great. And we have to learn how to become as good as we could possibly be. And gotta make sure I remember where I'm going with this. What was your question again? Maybe just say it again. It's fine.
Come from behind athletes.
Okay, come from behind. Okay. But so what happens is when you get in an environment with very competitive athletes, so that's where your Division I and NFL players come in to play. They feed off of it. They love it. This is part of who they are. It's like a hunting dog, a hunting dog. People go, "Oh, that poor dog. That poor dog loves to hunt." I mean, they just love it. They love it. They love being out there in the woods chasing after animals, And the same thing with those football players. They just love to compete. And so what you do is you set the stage for them. You teach them how to compete. You teach them how to, whether or not they feel like they're going to have a good day or not. You show them ways to how to, like on the bench press. If you're, my third warm up set was always not always, but a lot of times was 315 for threes. And I learned from this great bench press, great lifter, Mike Bridges, he was from the 80s. He said he did his third warm up for 3 sets of 3. I thought that was really interesting. I tried it. I loved it. And there were times where I'd go into a workout and I'd go, there's no way. It's not happening today. And I'd sit there and do that 315 for sets of 3 till I did feel good. And I remember one time it was like 8 or 10 sets. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, guess this is what we're going to do. And then at the end, I went, I'm feeling pretty good. Went ahead and did my workout. Had a phenomenal workout. And so I used that to teach the football players, hey, you don't feel good? Your feelings don't mean nothing, okay? They don't mean nothing to me, and don't mean nothing to your fan, and it certainly don't mean nothing to your opponent, all right? They're going to kick your butt just because they get that opportunity. What you got to do is you got to learn to find a way to compete when you don't feel like competing, all right? And I'm going to help you get in touch with your feminine side and get in touch with your feelings. I'm going to teach you how to compete. And sometimes they didn't like that. They didn't like the whole accountability. We go and run, and I'd go, all right, guys, we're going to run 7 of these. That's it. But they're going to be 7 good ones, and I'm only going to count the good ones. And, man, I remember one time at Liberty, we started at 5:30 at night. It was 10:30 at night. I'm standing out in that football field, and I'm just screaming, we will stay here. We will run until everybody makes the 7 sprints. That's it. I don't care. And, coaches are coming at me. They're tired. Players are coming. They're tired. We just can't do it. I don't want to hear. I can't. The whole mentality of this football program has got to change, and you have to find a way to win. And we stood out there till they finally decided I was serious, and they made it. And they couldn't believe that they were able to do that. But what that taught them was, hey, I do have the ability. We do have the ability, and we can find it. We don't have to do this the long, hard way. We can go and get it done the right way and be successful. And so you're teaching them how to do that in the off season, because I'd hear people say the best conditioned team wins in the fourth quarter. And I said, that's not always true, because you hear the teams, coaches say, this team we played had been in a situation where they went into overtime 2-3 other times and they won every time, and they're going to be hard to beat in an overtime situation because they believe they could win. They're confident they could win. And that hit me, and I went, so they understand how to compete. So I had to go and said, I'm going to teach my kids how to compete. And so I did the whole off season. We taught them how to compete. We held them accountable. That's why we did conditioning year round, so that there was no excuses. And there was an urgency. And I mean, it was hardcore. There's some things I wouldn't get away with doing it anymore. But I'd walk down and say, aren't you the starting left tackle? Yeah. I thought so. I said, who is it that plays right behind you? And they'd say, oh, so-and-so. And I said, oh, that makes sense. And they go, what do you mean? I said, well, he's down there. He got 20 more pounds on the bar than you do. And I said, so, next year when he's starting and you're playing second team behind him, I hope that you're just as supportive as he's been for you. And that, you come to the game, bring your pom-poms and cheer for him. Because I said, he's really working hard. I don't care. It doesn't matter what happens in here. What matters is what happens in the football field. That same old crap you hear from football players. And next thing I turn around, I'd see him with 40 pounds more on the bar. And I'd go back and forth and create this competitive environment. And my son even said, Daddy, I never understood you as a coach until I watched Westside versus the World. And he says, Louis was the same way. He wasn't going to let those guys know that they had arrived. And Louis was hardcore. I mean, I was in a meet in Tennessee one time, and Louis was there. And I turned, I'd had a good match, nothing great, but good. And I wanted to see Louis afterwards, and they said, no, he left. I said, why'd he leave? They said, all his guys bombed. And so he went home. And they said, he's really bad about doing that. He'll leave lifters at the meet. Just say, find your own way home. You're not riding with me. I don't ride with losers. Or they'd stop to get something to eat, and they'd go to sit down at a table, and he'd turn to the guy and say, you go sit somewhere else. I'm not sitting here with losers. and it's hardcore. I mean, that's hardcore talk. But sometimes for guys like myself, I need to hear that. I want to hear that. I want to hear the truth. Love could be stated in a lot of different ways besides sweet. Sometimes love can be kind of brutal, and sometimes I wish some people would tell me the truth. It would have hurt, but I ask, please, please tell me the truth. Help me become better. Because if you sit there and say something nice about me and don't sit there and tell me the truth, you don't show me love. You're not showing me love. You're not helping me.
For real, this time, I want to hit you with this last question.
Okay.
You started getting into this, and I want to say Josh Bryant's podcast, but it also may have been the Sorinex podcast, and my ears perked up a little bit. But taking the Bulgarian ideas and putting them into recovery and getting athletes prepared to get back on the field. How were you able to do that? I couldn't catch everything you were kind of doing in there, so I wanted to quiz you on it just a little bit, but how was you able to implement that?
Okay, for those folks who don't know, the Bulgarians in the 80s dominated the world of Olympic lifting. I mean, dominated. A little tiny country. And people say, well, they were on drugs. So was every other country out there, except for the United States. They were so good that not only could they, if it wasn't for their teammate, not only would they win their own weight class, they would have won the weight class above them. Okay. They won every weight class in Olympic lifting. And it was just dominant. I wanted to find out what they did. And I sat down and I went to hear one of their coach speak. And they did some really, really, really unusual things. They only trained 5 exercises. They trained 5 to 7 times a day. Maxing meaning they went as heavy as possible at that moment. Not an all-time max, but they did a heavy single up to 17 times in a workout. Okay. And they did that 6 days a week. It was crazy. Unheard of. I tried it in every kind of fashion you can imagine, trying to get strong, and it never worked for me. I mean, I tried everything. I mean, I tried, I one time benched 40 days in a row, every day. I benched between 1 to 3 times a day and maxed almost every single time. And when I got done 40 days, I wasn't any stronger. And I learned that there are 2 types of strength training. Well, I call 3 now. 2 types of strength training. There's strength training to exhibit your strength, or whatever type of strength that is that you want to be good at, max strength or accelerated strength, whatever it is. And strength training to develop strength potential. The other one I joke about is there's strength training to look like you're strong, but you're not. And that's what I do now. But as a competitive lifter, I spent 85% of my time training to develop strength potential, and only 15% of my time training to exhibit what I was capable of doing. And I find it probably going to be somewhat similar with athletes. You're going to spend a whole lot of time developing strength potential in them, and 15% probably in them exhibiting it. But if you're not going and training these kids this way, you're never going to know what they're capable of doing, So with the Bulgarian system, what I did was to set the world record is when I didn't realize it till afterwards, was that I took the limited number of exercises, the 5 exercises that they did, and that's what I did. And I just eliminated every exercise, everything that wasn't contributing to me exhibiting my bench press. And I didn't fall for this whole thing of I got to hit this body part, that body part. Because if you're doing things correctly, like my back got huge, even when I wasn't training my back. I couldn't do pull-ups, I couldn't do one-arm rows because of my shoulders. The bench press still made my upper back big because I did it the way to help stabilize it. But when I did do the pull-ups, it just accentuated my bench press. The key coming back is understanding what exercises you need to be really good at and eliminating wasted energy. You don't need to be wasting energy and helping these kids become as successful as possible. When they first start, they're all excited, they're enthusiastic, they'll run through a wall for you. And it's really hard sometimes as a coach not to go and gravitate towards that. And, but you got to go and hold them back a little bit, save something for later. The other thing that I found, biggest mistake I used to make for years, and it took me forever to figure it out, was the fact that, let's say I'm training with a 300-pound bench press max. I have a great training cycle. I go to max and I put up 350. My bench jumped 50 pounds. What does everybody do? They put their new training max at 350. And then 3-4 weeks later, can't understand why they're hurt or not making gains. If you are making great gains with 300 pounds, you will continue to make great gains with 310, 315. It's the amount of tonnage that you move and the speed in which the bar moves that allows you to be strong. And when you go and pick a training weight that's too heavy, the bar's going to move too slow, too often, that's going to move too slow, and it's going to be too heavy. All right? You're going to strain too often, and you're not going to make gains. And my guys, I had the hardest time getting them to hold off and listen to me and not go heavy. The other one they did was they just go and say, well, I just want to see where I'm at. So they go do a heavy single, and I'm like, it's like that muzzle loader. Dude, I was hoping for you to do 535. Yes, I know you're excited because you got 500, but you lost 35 pounds because you pulled the trigger too early. You didn't get enough powder in the gun. All right? So, yes, you gotta go wait for that progression and get you there before you can go start pulling that trigger.
Coach, this has been an amazing 2 hours. I appreciate all of your time.
Oh my gosh, it has been, hasn't it?
I was watching the time for you, so this was a dream come true.
Awesome.
I know a lot of guys that have worked for you. I've watched a lot of your stuff. It was very humbling to be able to sit down and talk to you, listen about your faith, listen about your career. So thank you so much for the time.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, Voodoo Power listeners. Thanks for watching and spending a little time listening to the coaches that we present on here. The channel has been growing because of community, and I really appreciate you being part of it. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button, leave a comment to let me know your thoughts, and share it with someone who might enjoy it. Those small things make a big difference in helping the channel reach more athletes and coaches. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next video. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.